Common Sense and Nuclear Warfare by Bertrand Russell, read by the author. Chapter 8 Territorial Adjustments. Conciliation Committee that I spoke of in the previous chapter will have as one of its most difficult tasks the suggestion for such territorial changes as may be considered necessary in the interest of peace. It cannot be known in advance which will be possible in this way, and what is to be said must be very tentative and liable to drastic changes when practical negotiations are undertaken. But, in spite of these uncertainties, it may be worthwhile to make a blueprint of what friends of peace might wish to see. The most important questions concern may be divided into three heads: Europe, Middle East, and the Far East. 1. Europe. Europe is at present entirely dominated by the fear of war. In Western Europe, there are United States forces and preparations for a nuclear attack on Russia. We are assured that the West would not initiate an attack, but that if Russia attacked even with conventional arms, the West would retaliate with nuclear weapons. In Eastern Europe, on the other hand, Russia has established communist governments in a number of satellite states, of which some, at least, contain a majority strongly opposed to communism. The governments which Russia has established in satellite states are kept in power by means of Russian troops. Europe is thus virtually partitioned between the United States in the West and Russia in the East. Before there can be any hope of stable peace, very radical measures must be adopted to put a neutral barrier between Russia and America and to restore independence of action to intermediate countries. There is one very simple measure which one could go a long way towards securing this result. It might be agreed that no sovereign state, whether in Eastern or Western Europe, should have any alien armed forces on its territory. This would entail very serious sacrifices for both America and for Russia. America has not, at present, the means of sending H-bombs from the United States to Russia, but can send them from any part of Western Europe, including Britain. The power of a H-bomb attack upon Russia would not be lost to America if no American armed forces were permitted in Europe. From the militarist point of view, this would be a very serious deprivation. But Russia, also, would lose by such an agreement, and I think that her loss would be as great as America's. If there were no Russian armaments to be feared, Hungary and Eastern Germany certainly, and probably as a parent, would abandon communism in favour of a kind of parliamentary socialism. This, of course, could only happen if there were no serious reason to fear a Russian invasion. It would be necessary, therefore, not only that the countries of Europe should be freed from alien forces, but also that their immunity should be guaranteed. It would be desirable to neutralize all Central Europe from the Rhine to the Vistula and limit severely the armed forces permitted to the neutralized states. Russia, not unnaturally, is much afraid of German rearmament. In view of Russian experience during the two world wars, it is certainly not surprising. On the other hand, Germany cannot be expected to acquiesce at all willingly in a partition between Eastern and Western Germany. There cannot be a secure peace in Europe until Germany is reunited, and if this is not to cause alarm to the Russians, it will have to be accompanied by an agreed limitation on German armaments. There are two general principles that should be observed in any European settlement. The first is to lessen all possible causes of friction, and the second is to permit each country to decide for itself what political and economic system it may prefer. Except for a limitation of armaments, there should be no interference with the internal affairs of any sovereign state. If it preferred communism, the West should not object. If it preferred parliamentary democracy, Russia should leave it free to do so. I do not think that the removal of American forces from Western Europe can become practical politics except as a sequel to an enforceable agreement for the abolition of nuclear weapons. If there is no such agreement, America, in the absence of European centers of occupation, is not on equality with Russia. And Western Europe, which depends upon American protection, can feel no security. It is for this sort of reason that the territorial questions cannot be wholly separated from the questions of disarmament, and that any conciliation that is proposed must embrace all problems involved in the East and West. 2. The Middle East. There are two very intractable problems connected with the Middle East. The one is oil, the other is Israel. As regards oil, Western Europe has allowed its economy to be deeply dependent upon the oil of the Middle East. In the cheerful days of British and French imperialism, this raised no great difficulty. The countries of the Middle East would be compelled by military power to consent to the exploitation of their resources by Western capitalist interests. But those days are past. Arab nationalism, encouraged by Russia, is in a position to insist upon independence and to demand of the West much higher interest to defend much higher terms than were formerly obtained. Although this is unpleasant for the West, it need not be disastrous. The West will have to come to terms with Arab nationalism and will have to make such economic concessions as the COP Arab nations to be still willing to sell their oil to Western Europe. The West, and especially Britain and France, has made the mistake of showing hostility to the new forces in the Middle East, to which the Russians have shown themselves friendly. If the need of all is no longer to lead the West to support ancient evils, there will have to be a radical change of outlook in Britain and France. And if a détente between Russia and the West is to be genuine, there will have to be a measure of agreement as to policy to be adopted towards the countries of the Middle East. The West will have to abandon support of bad governments, and Russia will have to restrain the desire to stir up trouble. The question of Israel is one of the most difficult of those that have to be faced in conciliation, if conciliation is to be possible. The hatred of Israel in Arab countries is regrettable but understandable. Not only in Arab countries but throughout Asia, Israel is regarded as a piece of unwarrantable Western imperialism. The fact that the Jews originally came from Asia is forgotten. What is remembered is that in the course of centuries, the great majority of them have become completely westernized. The West, however, cannot abandon the state of Israel after deliberately creating it and guaranteeing its protection. I think the only thing that can be done is to fix unalterably the geographical frontiers of Israel and undertake that Russia and the West jointly shall prevent any aggression by or against the state of Israel. If there were no uncertainty, and if the great powers were united in the matter, Jews and Arabs would in time get used to each other and discover that mutual hatred served no purpose. 3. The Far East. The conquest of China by the communists is the severest blow that the West has suffered since Lenin's government became secure. It cannot be denied that the Chinese communists have given evidence of militaristic imperialism. Their intervention in the Korean War was as unjustified as it was unfortunate, and their conquest of Tibet was the kind of thing which is severely condemned when done by Western power. It is a pity, however, that the West has allowed its hostility to these adventures to dominate policy to a disastrous extent. No reasonable man can expect the communists to lose control of China except in a universal cataclysm in which everybody loses control of everything. The presence in America of that Chiang represents China is unworthy of sensible men. The pretense in America that that Chiang represents China is unworthy of sensible men. The pretense in America and that Chiang represents China is unworthy of sensible men. I do say some strange sentences upon occasion. It must be part of any measure of conciliation to give the Communist government of China the position in UNO which is now accorded to Chiang. The present policy of defending Chiang will have to be abandoned. As regards Formosa, best that his friends can reasonably hope is that he should conclude an agreement with Communist China, leaving him in possession of Formosa for this lifetime on condition that, at his death, it should be joined to the mainland. The inheritance of Formosa to America, like that of Cyprus to Britain, is strategic and is bound up with preparedness for a nuclear war. If the danger of nuclear war can be averted, these two troublesome islands can be allowed to go their own way, unhelped and unhindered by the powers which have been attempting to control them. It will be said that the West will lose face if it makes concessions to Communist China. But such loss of faith, if it occurs, will be the penalty of having embarked upon a fruitless policy. However regrettable, it is not so regrettable as persistence in a course which can only lead to a disaster. China is potentially as powerful as Russia or the United States, and may well be actually as powerful within a few decades. The peace of the world cannot be secure if China is aggressive and imperialistic, which there is a grave danger of China becoming. America and Europe, including Russia, have certain common interests to defend against possible aggression from the East. The best defense consists not in armaments, but in wise, forbearance, and a genuine desire for world peace. Of this spirit, the Chinese, so far, have had no evidence. It's time that we gave them some reason to think better of us than they have done since the Opium War.